Hi, good day. So now we are going to have our continuation on our discussion in Unit 3. So we are now going to proceed to medieval period. Okay, so medieval period. So the art during the Middle Ages. So medieval period is also called as the Middle Ages. Okay, so it saw many changes up to the emergence of the early Renaissance period because of the four artistic styles that flourished. So, namely, we have early Christian art, Byzantine art, Romanesque art, and Gothic art. Because this age reflected the height of the power of the church, early art subjects were initially restricted to the production of religious art or Christian art, since the church was the central figure and authority of the period. So, most of the previous themes of the art styles of the Greeks and Romans, like flaunting of the naked human body and the depictions of the pagan gods and goddesses, were censored, resulting to the evident changes in the development of art. So basically, when we talk about the medieval period or the Middle Ages, actually, um, all the traces of the Greeks and the Romans pertaining to like the naked body and then the pagan religion, all of those were eradicated actually because the medieval period is the rise of the Christian church or the Catholicism. Okay? So, ng mga panahong yon, yung focus ng art ay puro about sa church, about sa Christianity and the spread of Christianity. Kaya ng mga panahong yon, nag-set sila ng standards na pasok dun sa standards ng Catholic Church. Such as, yun nga, bawal yung malalaswa. That's why, na-censor yung mga human body, yung pagpapalabas ng mga naked body ng human. So yon, lahat ng mga damit nila noon ay sobrang makakapal, even in their sculptures, even in their paintings. So the people in the art are parang well dressed. So talagang sobrang kapal ng mga suot nila kasi nga iniiwasan nila na magmukhang malaswa, okay? So what else? Yung mga paggawa ng mga sculptures and then ng mga paintings ng about sa mga pagan gods. So doon, maraming gods and goddesses yung ginagawa ng artworks. Pero nung panahon ng medieval period, ang nangyari is na-focus lang siya doon sa mga saints, na-focus lang sila doon sa paggawa ng artwork kay Jesus or sa Virgin Mary. So parang usually lahat ng mga themes nila no medieval period ay puro tungkol sa Catholic Church or sa Christianity. Okay? So, what are the characteristics of medieval art? So, art was created for the church to glorify God more than appeal to aesthetic sensibilities. So again, more than making things beautiful, ang kanilang number one objective or number one agenda is to glorify God. That's why everything or almost everything is always about God. From the songs, from the sculptures, to the paintings, okay, to the architecture, lahat yon is to glorify God. So kung makikita nyo, even though gumagawa naman sila mga bahay or ng mga castles for their royalties and nobilities and pati sa mga common people, pero yung pinakabongga na architecture is yung mga church, yung mga cathedrals, okay? Bakit? Kasi nga they aim to glorify God. Okay? So second, fully clothed, draped in deeply carved, stiff-looking clothes. So again, they are fully clothed. So ibig sabihin, yung kanilang mga damit ay sobrang um, talagang kumpleto. So, meron silang headdress, meron silang pangtaas, meron silang pambaba, meron silang sapatos. Okay? So, and then, they are draped in deeply carved, stiff-looking clothes. So, even in their sculptures and in their paintings, yung mga suot nila is parang sobrang kakapal, sobrang titigas ng tela. Okay? Yun nga, kasi nga, they are very afraid to show flesh. Okay? So, hindi sila pwede maging malaswa. And then, the faces are solemn with little emotions. So, makikita ninyo mamaya yung mga examples, yung mga facial expressions sa mga painting ay very minimal yung mga emotions. Okay? So, talagang parang medyo emotionless ang dating. So, ayan yung mga examples natin, gaya nga ng sinabi ko. So, obserbahan natin, yung mga tao ay fully clothed. Ayan. So, meron silang stockings, meron silang mga headdress, ganyan. Okay? So, makikita nyo, may mga veil. Ayan. So, yun yung mga examples natin ng fully dressed nga kung tawagin natin. And then, we have little emotion. So, kung makikita natin, eto, sobrang emotionless. Pero kinapitan na siya ng isang lalaking kalansay na. So, parang dead man. So, parang, ayun, parang zombie na yung lumapit sa kanya. Pero yung facial expression niya ay very emotionless pa din. Eto din, sinaksak na yung king ay parang walang emosyon, yung sumaksak ay walang emosyon din. Ito din, medyo little emotion naman ito, medyo naka-smile ng konti, pero hindi naman angkop yung facial expression dun sa nangyayari kasi sinaksak yung ulo niya. And then, we also have, of course, yung mga emotionless, very serious na mukha ng mother and child, which is a common theme during the medieval times. Now, we have this question. Why do medieval paintings depict emotionless faces and old-faced babies? Okay, so let me answer the first one. So we have emotionless faces. So why are medieval paintings or medieval sculptures or basta medieval art, why are people depicted as emotionless? Okay, the reason for that is their culture during the Middle Ages. Okay, so for them, people, especially the nobility and then the royalty, they should show what? Emotionless, or they should show little emotions only. So, as part of nobility or as a part of royalty, they should not show emotions, because if you show emotions, parang it's a sign that you are not matured enough, you are not refined enough, okay? So, yung mga matitinding emosyon, ito ay ugaling kalye. Yun yung paniniwala nila. Kaya, yung mga mayayaman noon, dahil para naman sa kanila yung mga painting, dahil sila lang naman yung nakaka-avail ng mga painting, sila lang naman yung ginagawa ng mga painting. So, they are depicted, or paintings are depicted in their favor. So, yung mga paintings, ang labas nila is little emotions as possible. In order to what? To parang inculcate to the nobility and the royalty that they should not show emotions. Otherwise, they are going to show that they are the same as these common people na walang disiplina. Okay? Kasi parang para sa kanila, if you show less emotions, then it shows na you are more matured, you are more refined, you are more disciplined. Okay? Now, what about old-faced babies? Bakit naman ganyan yung mukha ng mga babies? Kung papansinin niyo, halos lahat ng mga depiction ng babies sa medieval era or medieval age, yung lahat sila ay medyo ganyan yung itsura ng mga babies. Parang mukha ng matanda na pinaliit lang tapos nilagay dun sa katawan ng isang baby. Okay? So bakit ganyan yung pagkakadepict sa kanila? Simply because they believe that since Jesus is already a perfect being upon birth, so para sa kanila, in order to depict that Jesus is perfect from birth, parang ang nangyari, even though he is a child, he is possessing the maturity of a grown man already. Even kahit nung maliit pa siya, yung isip niya is mature na. Yung isip niya ay malalim na mag-isip. So, ang ginagawa nila na kasing mature ng mukha ng adults yung mukha ng baby Jesus. Okay? Para mapakita nila na si baby Jesus ay hindi isang innocent child, kundi si baby Jesus ay may kaalaman na sa mundo katulad ng mga mature na mga people or ng mga adults. Okay? So kaya yung mga faces ng mga babies, ng mga baby Jesus noon ay medyo matatanda na yung mga mukha nila. Okay? So yun yung answer doon. Now let's have milestones in medieval art. Okay, so we have again four artistic art styles. We have early Christian art, we have Byzantine art, we have Romanesque art, and then we have Gothic art. So these are basically the four major artistic styles that existed during the medieval times. Okay, so let's start with the early Christian art. What are the characteristics or key concepts of early Christian art? So number one, focused on spiritualism and mysticism. So again, ito, hindi naman na mahirap intindihin ito, spiritualism, simply because, yun nga, they are trying to focus on everything spiritual. Okay, so laging about religion, specifically about Christianity or Catholicism. And then we have mysticism. Bakit naman nagkaroon ng mysticism? Okay, so mysticism in the sense that everything remains a mystery, or most of the concepts remain a mystery. Okay, so for example, the existence of God. Okay, so the people know that there is a God existing, okay? But other details about God, hindi nila yon nalalaman, okay? Church lang yung nakakaalam nun. So kung ano yung ibibigay ng church na information, yun lang yung alam nila. And then when they ask questions about God, tendency is parang sasabihin ng church, ay hindi natin pwedeng questionin yan, okay? Kasi hindi natin maaarok yung kaisipan ng Diyos, okay? So parang ganon. So ibig sabihin, hindi nila fully mag-grasp yung concept ng God. Basta alam lang nila na may God, eto siya according to church, okay? So parang some things remain a mystery. That's why there is a sense of mysticism. What else? So depicted Jesus as a hero or a miraculous figure. So during the early Christian art or early Christian times, ito pa lang yung parang point na medyo transition age pa siya. Meaning, may mga tao na naniniwala pa rin sa pagan religion, and then the early Christians are trying to parang ano, parang make these people follower of Jesus. So parang ito yung mga panahon na ini-encourage pa lang nila yung mga tao na maging Christians kasi nga pagan pa yung mga tao, okay? So how are they going to do that? Of course, they are going to depict Jesus as someone who is really good, okay? That's why ginagawa nila, Jesus is a hero, Jesus is a healer, Jesus is a miraculous figure. So, everything positive about Jesus, yun yung pinapalabas nila sa mga artworks nila para yung mga taong nakakakita nun, naengganyo sila kay Jesus. Okay? So, parang kumbaga, they are promoting Jesus. Okay? Glorifying Jesus as a good figure. And then, it is done typically in catacombs. Kasi nga, ito yung mga panahon na yung mga tao is very uncertain kung saan sila mapupunta after death. Okay? So, kaya nilalagay yung mga early Christian art sa catacombs para yung mga tao, mafe-feel nila na there is life after death and Jesus is there. Okay? So, yun nga. And then, lastly, lean towards symbolism. Since people back then, some of them cannot read, cannot write, okay? So, ang nangyayari is, yung symbolism yung ginagamit nila in order to inculcate lessons from the Bible. Okay? So they are using symbolisms like bread and wine. Okay? So parang Jesus is provider, and then mother and child or filial piety. Okay? So parang nagpapakita na parents, especially mothers, should be like martyrs offering everything to their children. Okay? So ayan, magbigay na tayo ng examples. So ito ay Jesus and the Bleeding Woman. So this one is painted in a catacomb. So yan, makikita natin yung isang Bible story wherein itong si Bleeding Woman kasi inaagasan siya or nireregla na siya for 12 years tas hindi humihinto. Yan. So parang nagkaroon siya ng sakit. During or back then, iniisip nila ang regla ng babae ay madumi. So wala nang lumalapit sa kanya, wala nang tumutulong sa kanya, ganyan. And then, nung hinawakan niya yung laylayan ng damit ni Jesus, na-heal siya agad-agad. So, gumaling siya sa sakit niya. So, syempre, pag nakikita to ng mga tao, they are encouraged na Jesus is a healer. Especially for those people na may mga sakit nung panahon na yon. Alam naman natin nung medieval times, nauuso yung mga sakit, uso yung mga pandemic din, yung mga epidemic, uso din sa kanila yon. And then they have a lot of diseases na wala pang mga gamot, unlike sa panahon natin ngayon. Okay, so pag nakita nila yung mga ganitong klase ng illustrations, parang nabibigyan sila ng inspiration to follow Jesus. Okay, so that is the goal of early Christian art. Again, to gather as many followers as possible and to promote Jesus. Ito naman ay Christ and the Apostles in the Heavenly Jerusalem. So this is church painting in Rome. Okay, so makikita natin, ayan. Sa Rome naman 'yan. So, eto naman, it depicts Jesus as king, okay? So, since people during the Middle Ages or the medieval times, sila ay merong mga kings and queens. So, yun ang mga royalty nila, yun yung sinusunod nila. So, the closest association that early Christians can make with Jesus is a king, okay? So that people would know that Jesus is someone na in high position, Jesus is someone who we should follow because he is like a king, okay? So ito naman yung symbolism na ginamit dito sa early Christian art na ito. So parang yun nga, Jesus as king kasi makikita nyo, siya yung nakaupo sa throne, okay? And then we have detail from marble sarcophagus of Junius Bassus. So makikita natin dito na ayan, sarcophagus is yung parang casket or parang nicho. So doon nilalagak yung patay. So yun nga, nilagyan siya ng marble relief. So ayan, makikita natin yung mga saints, and then yung mga makikita natin yung mga details about the Bible na inukit diyan sa sarcophagus. Okay, so that is for early Christian art. Now, what about Byzantine art? So, Byzantine art preferred stylized imagery over naturalistic depiction. So, ibig sabihin, more than being natural or being realistic, they prefer stylized imagery or medyo inaartehan nila ng konti to emphasize their point. Okay, so mamaya may example tayo dyan. So, aim to inspire a sense of wonder and admiration for the church. So, ito naman, ginagawa nila is binobonggahan nila yung mga art nila sa church para yung mga tao, parang pagdating nila sa church, mapapawaw sila. Okay? So, para mag-spark yun ng sense of wonder and admiration of the church para yung mga tao mamangha sa church and sumanib na rin dun sa church or umanib na rin sila dun sa church. And then, lastly, use graceful, floating figures and golden tesserae to emphasize the otherworldliness of the religious subjects. Again, so wonder and admiration for the church and then otherworldliness of the religious subjects. So they intend so Byzantine art intends to create parang a sense na yung church ay otherworldly, sobrang ganda, heavenly yung dating. Okay? So para makapag-spark nga sila ng sense of wonder and admiration for the church. So ayan ang example natin ng golden tesserae or golden tessera. So ayan, pag singular. So makikita nyo, ito yung para mga gold foils or yung mga maliliit na gold pieces. Ayan, tapos kinakabit nila sa church para makintab yung dating. Pero para pagpasok ng mga tao, gold yung everything. Tapos medyo otherworldly, medyo ethereal yung dating. Okay, so ayan. So that they would get this feeling na kapag pumapasok sila doon, they know that the saints, they know that Jesus, the angels, they are parang on another level. Hindi sila tao. Yung king, although makapangyarihan, tao lang din siya. Pero ito ay otherworldly or heavenly sila. Ayan, so nilalagyan nila ng tesserae again to get or to parang inculcate a sense of wonder and admiration for the church. Okay? So, syempre, lahat naman ng papasok dyan, especially yung mga mahihirap, yung mga common people, pagpasok nila sa simbahan, syempre, talagang mapapawaw sila dyan kasi nga kumikintab yung buong paligid. Okay, so let's have examples for Byzantine painting. Kasi yung ano natin, yung kanina dun sa early Christian art, yun nga more on parang mga ano sila, mga sculptures and then medyo simple lang yung mga painting. But for Byzantine painting, ayan, they are exploring a lot of colors na. Okay? Pero yun nga, same pa rin nung early Christian art and same sa lahat ng mga art styles during the medieval period, fully draped ang kanilang mga clothes. Fully clothed yung mga tao, okay? So, yung makikita natin, yung damit nila sobrang kumpleto. Ayan, may mga veil and then even yung ano, even yung mga damit nila katulad nga ng sabi natin kanina, medyo matitigas tignan yung mga damit. Parang hindi natural yung mga tope, ganyan. So, ganyan yung itsura nila. And then, ang ginagawa nga, sabi nga natin kanina, so going back sa Byzantine art, they prefer stylized imagery over naturalistic depiction. So, kung makikita natin dito sa ating painting, yung mga saints or yung dinidepict nila ng mga saints and then yung mga biblical figures like Jesus and then like yung mga saints nila, so makikita natin na meron silang parang halo. Tapos nilalagyan nila ng tesserae, ng gold. Ayan, so makikita natin. So bakit nila nilalagyan ng ganyan? Sabi nga natin, hindi sila leaning toward the naturalistic depiction. So kapag nakita naman natin in reality, wala naman tayong ganyan. So kahit na siguro makakita tayo ng santo, wala naman nag-halo talaga sa ulo niya, okay? Pero bakit nila nilalagyan 'yan? So that they could emphasize that these people are otherworldly, okay? So ayan nga, so nilalagyan nila ng imagery. So nilalagyan nila ng imagery para maganda tignan. So, para merong distinction yung mga mortals or yung mga common na tao, tsaka yung mga saints, and then yung mga important biblical figures. Ayan. So, this is a Byzantine fresco in Asino Church, Nikitari, Cyprus. And then, we have Mother of Perpetual Help. Again, yung mother and child theme, ito ay recurring theme mula sa medieval period hanggang sa Renaissance. Laging merong mother and child. Okay, so ayan, so we have the Virgin Mary and then yun nga yung baby Jesus. So makikita nyo. And then yung proportion by this time, yung Byzantine paintings, yung kanilang proportion ayun din, medyo hindi pa ganun kaayos. Okay? Sabi nga natin kanina, parang na-restart. Okay? So parang na-restart yung art styles. Kasi kung mapapansin natin, yung Romans and then yung Greeks, they perfected the proportion, okay, of the body. And then pati yung mga muscles, ganyan, very realistic. So during the medieval times or medieval period, ang nangyari is parang na-restart yung art. So nangyari, bumalik ulit sila dun sa mga part na parang medyo hindi tama yung proportion, okay? So you have Byzantine sculpture. Examples naman ng Byzantine sculptures ay of course focused more on churches and on biblical figures. So same pa rin katulad ng mga nakaraan na puro about church yung mga artworks na napoproduce nila, especially their sculptures. Now, if you can see, puro relief yung mga nagagawa. Sabi nga natin, yung relief ay yung pagka tinignan mo yung harap, may nakaukit, may naka-emboss, pag finlip mo sa likod, flat lang yan. Okay? So, parang it is done in a flat surface and then naka-emboss lang yung mga figures. Yun yung relief. Katulad ng mga to, examples yan ng relief. Okay? So, bakit puro relief yung examples ng sculpture noong Byzantine period, early Christian, ganyan? Bakit puro relief yung ginagawa nila? It's because parang meron kasing sinabi yung Catholic Church and then nabasa ng mga clergy doon sa Bible na yun nga, yung 3D, as in yung 3D, yung parang kahit tignan mo yung harap, yung likod, katulad ng mga bust, yung pag inikot mo na ganyan, complete. So yan, makikita mo yung sculpture. Kapag ganun yung itsura ng sculpture, mako-consider siya as parang idol or parang imahen, which is according to the Bible, masama, hindi sinasang-ayunan ng Diyos, okay? So ang ginawa nung mga tao noong Byzantine period or Byzantine times and then early Christian times, puro relief lang yung ginagawa nila. Kasi hindi naman siya yung 3D, hindi naman siya kita hanggang likod. So embossed lang naman siya. So ito, sinasang-ayunan pa siya ng Diyos according to their clergy during the time. Okay, so we also have the mosaic. So, art of creating images with small pieces of different materials like colored glass, stone, or other materials. So, ayan, Church of San Clemente mosaic sa Rome. So, makikita natin. Ayan, maliliit na pieces yan. Ito din, example din yan ng tesserae or tessera. Okay, so ayan, makikita natin ang mosaic. Yung mosaic, actually, ginagamit na siya during the Roman times. So, yung mga Romans, mahilig sila gumawa ng mosaic. Even yung buong floor nila, ginagawa nilang mosaic yon. Okay? So, pero nag-persist siya lalo during the Byzantine period. Okay? So, during the Byzantine age, parang lahat sila nagmo-mosaic na, especially yung mga nasa church. Ginagamit nila yung mosaic. Now, what is the difference between mosaic and a collage? Kasi nagagamit din yan interchangeably ng mga tao. 'Pag mosaic kasi magkakapantay lang yung laki ng tiles na maliliit, okay? So, sabihin natin, 1 inch by 1 inch, okay? Yung piece ng tile, okay? So, lahat sila gano'n yung size nun. Unlike ng collage. Yung collage para siyang puzzle pieces na kahit anong style, okay? So, kahit anong style basta may mabubuo kang figure, that is collage, okay? Kahit na hindi sila magkaka-size. Pero 'pag sinabi nating mosaic, magkaka-size yung maliliit. Katulad nito, tignan niyo yan. Ayan, maliliit yan na magkaka-size. Okay? So, yun po yung gamit natin kapag yun yung difference between mosaic and collage. Mosaic, magkaka-size na maliliit. Collage, kahit hindi sila magkaka-size, pwede as long as it would create a figure. Next is we have Romanesque art. Okay, so Romanesque art is used as visual reminders of biblical stories which help them teach the faith to an illiterate population. Okay, so ibig sabihin, yung art, again, ginagamit nila as a way to teach the illiterate population. So since not all people back then can have like, or can afford education, can afford a tutor, so hindi karamihan sa mga tao noon ay hindi marunong magbasa at magsulat. So, paano nila natuturo yung teaching of the church? Siyempre, they are using art instead. Okay? So, during the Romanesque art, yun yung Romanesque times, yun yung prevalent na way on how they are going to teach the teachings of the church. And then paintings, books, and tapestry are colorful and decorated while depicting religious events or fictional tales. So kung makikita natin kanina ng mga ng earlier artistic styles, which is yung early Christian and then the early Christian, and then you have the um Byzantine, ayan. So, yun nga, makikita natin na yung mga colors noong mga panahon na yun ay medyo experimental pa rin. Okay? Though gumagamit sila ng colors, pero hindi pa ganun ka-colorful. Most of them are saturated. Okay? But during the Romanesque art, ito ay very colorful na. And aside from that, they are also using books and tapestry na. Noon kasi, yung mga earlier pa, ang gamit lang nila doon ay puro mga scrolls, tela, doon sila nagsusulat, ganyan. And then what else? mosaic, ganyan, sculpture, painting on the wall, yun yung ginagamit nila. Pero during the Romanesque art, nagkaroon na sila ng books, nagkaroon na sila ng paper, okay? So meron na silang paper which they use, parang ginagamit nila yun as para sa Bible, for letters, ganyan, and then they are using different colors also, okay, for paintings and tapestry. So we have Romanesque sculpture, ayan. So the Portico da Gloria, Santiago Cathedral, and then we have Romanesque sculpture at Vezele. Ayan, makikita natin, hindi pa rin ganun ka-refined katulad sa na comparable sa Greeks and Roman sculptures. So makikita natin yung sculpture nila is medyo off pa rin yung mga proportion, pero makikita natin na it's showing a little bit of emotion na rin. Okay? So medyo may mga nakasmile na, may mga worried faces na rin, tas meron pa rin na pero may mga natitira pa rin paunti-unti na medyo emotionless yung mga, facial expression. Pero yun nga, during the Romanesque, times, art is slowly trying to open up already. So they are exploring more, okay? Pero still pa rin, same pa rin sila ng topic, more on church pa din. Pero hindi na solely church. Kasi yung early Christian and then the Byzantine, puro church. Pero during the Romanesque sculpture, mostly about church, pero they are exploring topics and subjects na which is not really about the church. So medyo nagkakaroon na ng variety of subjects, okay? Ayan, so example, yung tapestry. Ano ba yung tapestry na sinasabi natin? So tapestry is a form of textile art usually hung for decorations. So para siyang yung mga tela, parang mga carpet or cortina na ginagamit ng mga tao na parang as drapes or backdrop sa likod. Okay, so traditionally woven on a vertical loom with rich colored designs or scenes. Katulad nga nasabi ko kanina, nagiging malikhain na sila sa pag explore ng color. So you can see here, ayan, mga tapestry yan. So ito ay mga examples ng parang mga tinahe na mga carpets or cortina na may mga designs. And katulad din ng sinabi ko kanina, hindi na solely about church yung subjects. Meron ng variety ng subjects. Katulad nitong mga to, it is depicting the medieval life. So life ng mga princess and then ng mga nobility, mga fictional na mga hayop katulad ng unicorn, ayan. So what else? Yung life ng mga medieval nobilities din or ng mga knights, okay, na nagkakasiyahan. Kasi noon, 'di ba, puro about church or biblical stories yung mga nagiging subject. Pero ngayon, nagkakaroon na rin ng iba't ibang subjects na about sa mga tao. Okay, katulad nga nito. And then you can see a variety of color here. So, example ng tapestry. Next is we have illuminated manuscripts. So, ito naman ay parang mga libro. So, nasa mga papel sila and then may kulay yung mismong mga pages. So, they have colored pages back then. Okay? So, ito ay kinukulayan ng mga tinta or ng mga dinurog na mga minerals and then yun yung pinangkukulay nila. So, makikita natin illuminated manuscripts ito. Bakit siya illuminated? Kasi sometimes kapag ito ay nalagay nyo sa light, kumikintab din sila. So, parang medyo glossy yung dating ng illuminated manuscripts. Okay? So, ayan nga. We are exploring colors nung mga panahon na to. Okay? So, they are being very creative with colors during this time. And then, they also have metalwork adornment. So, usually kasi before, during the Roman times and then during the early Christian art, most of the people are using like wood, mga baul na mga wooden or kung ano man yung mga lalagyan, puro mga wood yon. Pero during the Romanesque art, nagkaroon sila ng metalwork adornment, meaning yung mga mayayaman, yung mga lagayan nila ng mga alahas, lagayan nila ng damit, or lagayan nila ng kung ano-ano man, like letters, and then yung mga nasa church din, yung mga pare, lagayan nila ng rosary, lagayan nila ng kung ano-ano. So, nagkakaroon sila ng parang baul na malaki, tapos gawa yun sa metal, and then nilalagyan nila yun ng mga design and then ng tesserae, kaya nagiging makintab. So, nagiging bongga yung mga gamit. So, by this time, kanina kasi 'di ba, sabi ang emphasis ay yun nga to glorify the church more than aesthetic purposes. Pero during the Romanesque art, medyo nag-open up na yung art and then they are welcoming aesthetic sense na, okay? Okay, lastly, we have Gothic art. Okay, so Gothic art is intricate and well-ornamented details in painting and sculpture. More known for its architecture that is different from the usual structures in early Europe. Okay, so usually, pag sinabi nating Gothic art, ito yung very intricate yung mga designs. Okay? So, very complicated, very complex, very intricate yung mga designs ng Gothic art. Okay? So ayan, we have Gothic sculpture. So we can see the detail here. Ayan, look at the corners, right? Tsaka dun sa mga columns. Makikita natin, even yung poste merong ukit na maliliit. So actually, yung Gothic sculpture, very into sila sa mga sa mga details na sobrang liliit. Okay, mahilig sila sa maliliit na details. Ayan, gaya niyan. Very intricate. Parang sa kanila, the more na kaya mong ipakita yung ganda kahit sa maliliit, ibig sabihin the more na skillful you are, okay? So that's why they tend to create like very little details na uniform in nature, okay? So ayan, makikita natin yung sculpture nila, ang liliit na mga details na sobrang matrabaho gawin. Kasi nga para sa mga sa Gothic sculpture or Gothic art, pagka kaya mong gawin siya na maganda in a small scale, it shows skill. Okay? So this one is Western Royal Portal at Chartres Cathedral. And then this is a Gothic sculpture in the late 15th century, Amiens Cathedral. So makikita natin, very complicated, very intricate yung design. Mahilig yung Gothic sculpture doon. Yun yung mga key concepts natin sa Gothic art or Gothic sculpture. Maliliit, mga intricate designs, small details but complicated or complex, and then mahilig sila sa mga pointed. Okay? So katulad nito. Mahilig sila sa pointed. Okay, next is we have Gothic painting. So ayan nga, gumagamit sila ng iba't ibang colors na rin, although saturated pa rin yung kulay, ganyan. Pero makikita natin na medyo nag-i-improve na sila when it comes to the folds. Okay, so when it comes to the folds ng damit, medyo nag-i-improve na sila. Medyo tumatama na yung fold ng mga damit nila, but the proportion is still off. Okay? Pero at least, they are exploring a lot of colors na. So katulad niyan, pati yung mga tao sa likod, yung may mga color combination na rin yung damit. Okay, so nag-explore na sila. And then we can see here, little details pa rin. Ayan, makikita natin na it is very intricate. Pero yun nga, the facial expressions are still emotionless during the painting of this time. Okay, and then they are using tesserae pa din, yung medyo golden, pakintab para magmukhang maganda. And then the same theme, katulad kanina, recurring theme, katulad ng sinabi ko, is the mother and child. So this is Maesta del Duomo de Siena. So tempera and gold on wood, itong painting na to. Okay, so we have also Gothic music. Okay? So Gothic music, ito yung ginagamit natin ito yung tinatawag natin monophony, or yung pagkanta nila is very monotonous. Okay? So yung Gothic music. Bakit monotonous yung Gothic music? Kasi ito ay church music. Kasi kapag medyo may variation ng tone, okay, may variation ng tone, ang nangyayari, hindi na kumakanta yung ibang tao kasi hindi nila abot yung tono, okay? So para lahat ng tao ay makakanta ng church music, ginagawa nila na yung medyo monotone siya, okay? Kaya siya monophonic. So ito ay Circumdederunt Me. So Good Friday Passion. Okay, so yun yung example. Di ko na siya masyadong tatapusin kasi baka mag-elevate na tayo dito. Okay, so ang tawag dito ay, aside from Gothic music, this is called as Gregorian chant. Okay, so yun nga. Ito yung ginagamit nila. So, kung mapapansin natin, dahil isa lang yung tono nila or medyo mababa, so lahat ng tao dun sa simbahan pwede silang makasunod dun sa kanta. Okay, so let's have medieval architecture, okay? So, medieval architecture, let's start with early Christian architecture, church, basilica, and then dome. Actually, yung term na basilica kasi, meron din kasing term na basilica na ginagawad yung pope sa certain church, okay, na na-attain niya yung, na-attain niya yung basilica status, okay? Pero iba yon. Kasi meron din tayong term na basilica na tinatawag sa architecture. Pag sinabing basilica, this is a rectangular building na may altar sa one end and then straight line as a path. So, ibig sabihin, lahat ng path niya ay pa-straight. Okay? So, walang pa-circle na path. Laging padire-diretso lang siya. So, starting from the entrance, pag pupunta ka dun sa loob, pa-straight lang yung path niya. Okay? So, yun yung tinatawag natin na basilica. Now, what is the difference between a church, a church, and then a cathedral? Okay? So, yung cathedral kasi, ito ay seat or ito yung church kasi, ito ay lahat ng dwelling na pinupuntahan ng mga tao for worship. Okay? So, under the Catholic Church. So, basta yun ay dakong pagsamba, ang tawag doon ay church. Okay? Pero pag sinabi natin cathedral, this is a kind of church na nagko-contain sila ng bishop. Okay? Pag yung bishop, doon siya nagsistay, doon siya nagmimisa, cathedral ang tawag doon. Kapag chapel naman, ito ay parang simbahan lang doon sa maliit na bayan. Okay? And then walang pari doon, basta meron lang doon na parang cross or something, may altar lang doon, and then doon lang sila nagpe-pray. Parang chapel din sa mga ospital. Okay? So yun yung pagkakaiba ng church, chapel, and then ng cathedral. Okay? So ayan nga, ito yung example nila. Now, if you can observe, meron ditong atrium. Okay? So ayan, atrium. So bakit kailangan merong atrium yung basilica? Okay? Kasi nga they don't have electricity yet. So at this point in time, so they are trying to catch as many natural light as possible para hindi madilim yung kanilang church, okay, during the daytime. So they have the atrium kasi medyo maaliwalas tong atrium dahil wala tong bubong. So nagre-reflect siya dito sa church nila dito sa loob, okay? Kaya meron siyang atrium. Again, pag sinabi natin basilica, this is a rectangular building. Okay, so that is for early Christian architecture. Another is, aside from basilica or rectangular buildings, they also have martyriums or domes. Okay, meron sila mga domes. So, a martyrium is a circular building interpreted as a center or chamber that serves as a burial area or preservation area for the relics of martyrs. So, this one is a holy sepulcher in Jerusalem. So, makikita natin, ayan, mga domes sila, tapos ito ay nagsisilbi na, parang libingan or dito nilalagak yung mga bangkay ng mga, martyrs or ng mga pari na namatay during the Holy War or yung tinatawag nga nila na crusades, okay? Yung mga pari na namatay in line of service kasi pinapalaganap yung Christianity. So, yung mga pari na namatay during that time, sila ay kino-consider as martyrs, ayun, dito sila sa martyrium nililibing. Okay, now we have Byzantine architecture. So ayan po, ito ang Byzantine architecture ay made-define natin as very colorful. Okay, kasi nga ito yung nag-explore na sila ng colors, okay? But more than the colors, ang kanilang characteristic is it has a heavy Roman influence. Okay? Anong mga influences yon? We have vaults, we have arches, we have domes, and then we have columns. Yung mga columns na na-discuss natin nung first video. And then we have mixture of brick, stone, and mortar. Okay? So again, they are using sturdy materials just like the Romans. Okay? So more on the or more than the aesthetic side, they are into like the sturdiness of the infrastructure. And then they have monumental in size. Katulad nga ng mga Romans, gusto nila malalaki yung mga building nila. Okay? And then they decorate it with gold and then mosaics and colorful and then colorful details. And then Middle Eastern. So meaning the Byzantine architecture po, ito ay halo na rin or parang naghalo yung influences ng mga Middle Eastern people and then ng mga Roman people or ng mga Christian people. So makikita natin 'yan, 'di ba? May mga patusok, ganyan, may mga dome, yung itsura niyan parang medyo Middle Eastern yung dating. Okay, so parang nangyari it's a fusion of Middle Eastern influences and Roman influences as well. And then yung mga nakita natin kanina, yung mga ginagamitan ng golden tesserae, yon sa loob niyan, yun, medyo makintab yung buong lugar. Tapos yung sahig nila is naka-tiles, naka-mosaic. Okay? So next is we have Romanesque architecture. Romanesque architecture is very iconic actually. Yung mga nakikita nyo ng mga castles sa mga palabas and then yung mga nakikita nyo yung castles usually sa like Disney, ganyan. So ito yung example yon ng mga Romanesque architecture. Paano natin ma-define or ma-describe yung Romanesque architecture? So it is defined by its very thick walls. Okay? Sobrang kakapal ng walls nila. Katulad ng makikita nyo, ayan, so, puro bato, okay? Very sturdy walls. Actually, they don't care about how it looks like or they don't really care that much about the aesthetics as long as it is or it can stand as a fortress, okay? So, pagka ito, yung mga to, against sa mga mananakop, against sa mga infiltration, kahit na i-cannonball yung pader, hindi pa rin mabubuwag, yun ang magandang Romanesque architecture. Mas matibay, mas maganda. Di bali ng plain yung itsura, basta matibay siya. Okay? So, how can we characterize Romanesque architecture? Again, thick, sturdy walls, and then we have very few windows. And then we have slit-like windows. Kung makikita natin, ayan, slit-like yung mga windows nila. So, sobrang laki nung infrastructure, puro pader, pero yung mga bintana, sobrang liliit. So, kung papasok kayo sa loob ng Romanesque architecture, napakadilim sa loob ng mga castles na yan. Okay? So, we have Castle Rising Castle in Norfolk, England. And then we have Castle Loare in Aragon, Spain. Okay? So, ito yung kadalasan ng mga nagiging mga fortress. Kaya sobrang kakapal ng mga walls nila. Okay? So, ayan. So, ito po. Ayan, ito yung mga characteristics or ito yung mga key concepts din ng Romanesque architecture. So you have the style of the traditional medieval castle. So again, traditional yung castle na yan, katulad nga ng sinabi ko kanina. So, and then geometric shapes, puro geometric shapes yung ginagamit. It has rounded arches. It is decorated with relief sculptures to teach the Christian faith. So sa loob nila, meron din yung mga relief sculptures. Okay, and then you have shelter and protection, which is the number one objective ng Romanesque architecture. Again, is to be sturdy and withstand infiltration. Okay? Kasi nga, it acts as the shelter and protection of people. And then we have slit-style windows that are few, and then massive and very thick, solid walls. So ito, Pisa Cathedral, although may mga parang influences na rin siya ng Gothic, okay? Pero makikita natin, sobrang konti ng mga bintana din nila, very slit-like, and then sobrang solid na rock yung walls niya. Okay, so example siya ng Romanesque architecture. Now, what about Gothic architecture? So we have for cathedrals, kadalasan ng mga ginamitan ng Gothic architecture ay mga cathedrals or yung mga churches kung saan nagsistay at nagmimisa ang mga bishop or matataas na members ng clergy. And then you have the features of Gothic style are pointed arches, long and narrow windows, rose window, and stained glass. Okay? So again, isa-isahin natin, pointed yung mga arches nila. Ayan, kung makikita nyo ito, yung mga arches na yan, pointed. Okay? So yung mga bintana pointed, pataas din. Okay? So although may mga rounded arches din sila, pero mostly na mga arches nila ay pointed, kagaya niyan. Okay? And then they have long and narrow windows. So, parang katulad din sa Romanesque, medyo slit yung windows nila. Doon nanggaling yung narrow windows, kagaya nito. Okay? And then, meron silang rose window. Yung rose window ay ito. Yan yung karamihan. Yan yung karamihan ng mga cathedrals, sa mga simbahan, may mga ganyan. Rose window ang tawag dyan. And then, stained glass. Yun nga. Yung mga simbahan din dito sa Pilipinas, kung mapapansin natin, may mga stained glass art din. So, galing yun sa influence ng Gothic architecture. Ayan. So sabi ko nga kanina, yung Gothic architecture is very into small complex details. Okay? Kasi para nga sa kanila, the more na maraming details na maliliit, na maganda tignan, mas skillful yung labas. Okay? Kaya makikita natin na grabe yung mga details niya. Just imagine kung gaano katagal nila yan hinulma nung tinatayo nila yan. Kasi hindi lang yan basta poste, talaga nilalagyan nila ng mga intricate designs, okay? Na noon pa nila tinayo pero hanggang ngayon nag-exist, katulad nitong Milan Cathedral. So ayan, makikita natin may mga rose windows, may mga pointed arches, ayan, ayan, mga pointed arches yan lahat. Itong nasa taas, pointed arches din to. Ayan, so makikita natin same din, parehas din sila ng sinabi kanina. Okay, so 5 key characteristics of Gothic architecture. Ano yung 5 key characteristics ng Gothic architecture? Number 1, it is tall, upward, and pointed with elegance and grace. So kadalasan ng mga Gothic architecture, makikita ninyo na sobrang tatangkad nila na mga payat na na pointed. Okay, so halos lahat ay pointed. So tignan nyo kanina, ayan, mga pointed din yan. Ito, pointed. So makikita natin mga pointed sila. Okay, what else? Flying buttresses, may examples tayo mamaya. Pointed arch, katulad nga ng sinabi ko, ayan, puro pointed yung mga arch na yan. So, i-observe nyo na lang siya. Vaulted ceiling, so na-topic na rin natin yung vaults nung nakaraan, nung nagtalakay tayo ng Roman architecture. So, you have vaults, pero mamaya may mga examples pa rin tayo. And then, sometimes, ini-include din nila yung characteristics ng gargoyles. Kasi hindi naman lahat ng Gothic architecture ay merong gargoyles. Pero yun nga, kadalasan merong gargoyles. So, sinasama siya minsan. Pero yung pinaka key characteristics dyan is yun nga, tall, upward and pointed, flying buttresses, and then you have pointed arches, and then vaulted ceilings. So, ayun po. And then, may mga rose windows. Ayan. So, observe nyo na lang yan, yung picture na yan. You can also search for these sa Google, okay? So, kung ano pa yung mga examples ng Gothic architecture. So, ito po yung flying buttresses. So, kung napanood ninyo yung Beauty and the Beast na animated movies, 'di ba si Beast ay nagtago sa mga gargoyles at sa mga flying buttresses. So, ayan po yung itsura ng flying buttresses po natin. Bakit po nagkakaroon ng flying buttresses? Kasi nga, ito po ay para sa support ng building. So, additional support siya ng building. Okay? So, parang additional poste siya. So, yan po itsura niya. Yung may mga ganyan-ganyan, flying buttresses ang tawag dyan. So, you can observe also the pointed arches. Yan, mga pointed yung mga arches niya. Okay, so stained glass, yun, common knowledge naman to, alam naman ng lahat yan, yung stained glass art. And then we have vaulted ceiling. Pag sinabi ng vaulted ceiling, yan, ganyan yung itsura niya. Ayan, yung parang pag criss-cross yung ceiling. And then, of course, we also have the gargoyles. So, sa Notre Dame, yung ganyan, yung may gargoyles. Okay, so the next one would be about the Renaissance, which is the one of the most prominent movements or art styles out there. So the Renaissance period, from the word itself, Renaissance, this is parang reawakening or re-enlightenment, okay? So Renaissance period began in Italy, especially specifically in Florence, where the culture was surrounded by the remnants of the once glorious empire. So what empire are we talking about? The Roman Empire. So this was a period of rebirth. Okay? So again, sabi ko nga, re-enlightenment. So rebirth. For it ushered in a new outlook on man and the world. There was a revival of classical learning and the study of the ancient Greeks and Roman texts. Kasi during the Middle Ages or the medieval period, ang nangyari kasi, since the church is in power, so parang yung church yung humawak lahat ng power, okay? So, anong nangyari? They censored a lot of things. Even science. They censored science kasi they believe that science is going against God. Okay? So, nung panahon na yon, medyo kinokontrol nila yung mga tao, medyo kinokontrol nila yung learning, kinokontrol nila yung art because they are censoring a lot of things. The clergy is censoring a lot of things. But during the Renaissance period, people began to parang find answers to some questions that the church cannot provide an answer. So therefore, nagkaroon ng science ulit, nagkaroon ulit ng parang reignition of the desire to create different artworks na non-conforming sa church, ganyan. Okay? So humanistic education based on rhetoric Ethics and liberal arts was pushed as a way to create well-rounded citizens who could actively participate in the political process. Kasi again, during the medieval period or medieval times, ang nangyari is yung church lang yung may hawak ng lahat ng power. The church even controls the royalty. Okay? But during the Renaissance period, parang ang nangyari, sinulong nila na magkaroon ng edukasyon yung mga tao ay matutong magsalita for themselves, yung mga tao tinuruan nila ng ethics para alam nila kung ginagawa na ba sila ng mali o hindi. At tinuruan din sila ng liberal arts para yung mga tao alam nila kung ano yung ginagawa sa kanila at ano yung ginagawa ng mga nasa lipunan, okay? So ayun nga, so that they could produce well-rounded citizens who could participate actively in the political process para hindi lang sila laging nauuto ng mga rulers, para alam nila kung kailan may ginagawang kalokohan yung mga rulers nila at kailangan na nilang lumaban. Okay, so kumbaga yung Renaissance period, ito ay muling pagkabuhay or mula sa isang panahon na madilim, which is the Dark Ages, parang mga mangmang yung tao, mga walang alam sila. The Renaissance period, dito sila ulit nagkaroon ng awareness. Okay, that's why it's good. Okay, so what are the characteristics of Renaissance art? So more visually accurate and secular. Okay, so yung secular kasi meron pa rin silang mga traces or actually yung ano nila, yung tawag nito, yung subjects nila is about church pa din. Pero nagkaroon na sila ng ibang topics outside of the church which is more humanistic in nature. And then it became more accurate in terms of like the proportion and the realistic, parang naging realistic na rin yung mga itsura ng mga dine-depict nila. Okay, human emotions were depicted literally. So, unlike the medieval times na medyo emotionless or medyo kulang yung emotions, bumalik na ulit yung human emotions to art. Okay? Katulad ng Roman times and then ng Greek times na medyo yung emotions ng muka ay sobrang expressive, naging ganun na ulit yung artworks ng Renaissance art. And then lastly, revival of classical learning and the ideals of classicism became the artistic standards. So, ibig sabihin, yung naging artistic standard na kailangan sundin ay yung standards noong mga early Greeks or rather nung classical Greek and ng classical Romans. Okay? So, closer to the classical Greeks and the classical Romans yung art, the more na mas maganda siya. Okay? So, ayan, we have three parts ng Renaissance kasi hindi naman siya buong Renaissance. Meron tayong tinatawag na early Renaissance, merong high Renaissance, and then meron tayong late Renaissance. Okay, so let's have our Renaissance milestones. So we have the themes of Renaissance art. Ano yung prevailing themes during the Renaissance? So we have the rebirth of humanism. So the way of thought that focuses on human beings and their potential for achievement. So again, stressing on potential for achievement. They are aiming for perfection. Katulad nung classical Greeks and classical Romans, if it's more realistic, then it's more beautiful. Okay, so the aim is to achieve an artwork that is closer or closest to realistic view. Okay, so yun nga, yun yung potential nila for achievement. Ano yung ina-achieve nila? To be as perfect as possible or to be as realistic as possible. Number two, rebirth of naturalism. So, depiction of natural settings. Again, they don't intend like um, parang mga imaginative things or fictional things unlike nung medieval times. Okay, nung medieval times kasi medyo ino-OA yan nila or medyo ang ginagawa nila ay naglalagay sila ng mga imagery na hindi naman makatotohanan katulad nga ng halo, mga unicorns, mga fictional na mga animals, okay? Pero yung Renaissance, they are focusing on what is real. So what they can see in reality, yun yung nilalagay nila sa mga artwork nila. So perspective and depth in art. So nagkaroon din sila ng perspective tsaka ng depth in art. Dito na umusbong yung individuality, okay? So iba yung art style ni Michelangelo, iba yung art style ni Leonardo da Vinci, iba yung art style ni Raphael. Nagkaroon ng iba't ibang schools of art. Okay? So, hindi lang isa yung itsura ng mga art styles, ng mga artworks, magkakaiba sila depending on the individuals. Okay? So, next, create non-religious themes or the return of pagan themes. So, nagkakaroon na rin sila ngayon ng mga subjects na pagan katulad nung dati. Kasi 'di ba nung medieval times na censor 'yon. Kailangan lahat ng artworks ay about sa church. Kung hindi about sa church, at least about sa nobility or sa royalty. Okay? So bawal yung mga pagan. Okay? Pero nung Renaissance bumalik yung mga pagan themes. Okay? Nagdo-drawing na rin sila, nagpe-paint na rin sila ng about sa mga gods and goddesses, sa mga parang incarnates ng mga feelings or ng mga abstract na mga bagay, okay, katulad ng love, ganyan. So, ayun nga, nagkaroon sila ng mga non-religious themes and then ng mga pagan themes. So, hindi na siya sinesensor, hindi na sila kinakasuhan, hindi na sila pinaparusahan for drawing that. So, natanggap na rin yun eventually ng society na bumalik yung pagan themes. And then, privately owned art and private schools of art. Katulad nga ng sinabi ko kanina, kaliwat kanan yung pag-usbong ng mga art schools and then ng mga artworks. Kaya nagkaroon ng iba't ibang mga artists and then iba't ibang mga art schools. So meron din na sculpture and direct architecture. Okay, so nagkakaroon, syempre may mga sculpture din sila tsaka architectures. And then artists became popular with their art, which is specified as individualism. Kasi before, di ba, ang mga paintings, di ba, painting sa church, ina-address lang yon as parang mural or fresco painting at blank cathedral. So, hindi natin alam kung sino yung nag-paint nun. So, yung mga nag-paint sa catacombs, yung mga sculptors, yung gumawa ng church, hindi natin alam kung sino gumawa nun. Okay, hindi naging matunog yung pangalan. Pero nung Renaissance art, dahil may individualism, parang nagkaroon ng identity yung mga artwork. Kaya yung mga artists nung mga panahong yon or artists nung Renaissance period, naging iconic sila. So, kilala natin si Michelangelo, kilala natin si Leonardo da Vinci, kilala natin si Donatello, kilala natin si... So, kilala natin yung mga yung mga artists. Bakit? Kasi nga nagkaroon sila ng sarili nilang icon noong Renaissance dahil nga it emphasized individualism. So hindi lang sila basta Mona Lisa painting 'yan ganyan ganyan. Talagang Mona Lisa Nino. Okay, nagkaroon ng emphasis dun sa individual na gumawa ng artwork. Okay, so let's start with Renaissance painting. So ito si Giotto de Bondone. So siya ay ang subject naman niya ay more on religion kasi early pa to sa early Renaissance. So medyo close pa siya sa medieval. Okay? So noong mga panahon to, kita niyo naman na yung proportion ay hindi pa rin ganun pa rin hindi ganun kaayos kasi nga early Renaissance pa lang to. So parang transition siya from medieval times. So kung makikita natin dito, medyo ayan may mga imagery pa rin, may mga halo pa rin sila. So ayan, makikita natin may mga halo. And then yung proportion, sobrang liliit ng mga tao compare dito. Pero yun nga, ang emphasis kasi nila is si Madonna and Child. So parang ang nangyayari, parang dahil sila yung malaking figure, ibig sabihin sila yung focus or sila yung mas mataas yung position nila kasi mas malaki sila. Okay? So ayan nga, sabi ko nga, paulit-ulit lang yan mula no medieval hanggang Renaissance, Madonna and Child always yung mga nagiging subject nila. So yung Madonna and Child, Madonna enthroned, Light into Egypt. Okay, so makikita natin na si Giotto di Bondone, although kabilang na siya sa Renaissance period, dahil sa early Renaissance siya, medyo mukhang medieval pa rin yung kanyang artwork or yung kanyang painting. Next is we have Masaccio. Ayan, so makikita natin, iba na siya sa gawa ni Giotto di Bondone. Kasi si di Bondone, fully clothed pa rin yung mga drawing, yung mga paintings niya. Kasi nga, dahil transitioning to early Renaissance from medieval. So, yung mga trademarks nila like yung mga clothes nga na balot na balot. Pero pagdating kay Masaccio, although religious figures pa rin yung pinapakita niya, welcome na sila na mag-drawing ng mga nakahubad. Ayan, so more flesh na yung pinapakita nila. Ayan, so makikita natin si Adam and Eve. This is the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. So makikita natin na na sila, hindi na sila ganun na nagsisensor ng human body, ng naked body. So nakikita na yung mga yung mga genitals, ganyan, nakahubad. And then si Jesus din, dito na nagsimula yung depiction ni Jesus na nakahubad din si Jesus. Okay, na yung cloth lang sa bewang ni Jesus yung meron. Okay, pero before nung medieval times, si Jesus ay laging yung parang fully clothed din. Okay, so ayan, we have Madonna and Child with Angels. So, yon same pa din. Pero makikita natin yung technique ng paggamit ng mga tupi sa damit is as close to reality as possible. So makikita natin na makatotohanan na, unlike nung eto, yung mga tupi nila ay medyo ano pa, medyo may mga off pang tupi. Pero itong, Madonna and Child with Angels, makikita natin even the shadowing. So ayan, makikita natin yung value nung drawing niya na yung light and darkness, tama yung pagkaka-place, and then yung mga tupi. Pero still, meron pa ring mga imagery, and then yung mga proportion pa din medyo off, okay? And then we have also the tribute money, which is exploring about color. So makikita natin dark na dito sa bandang to, pero dahil ito yung focus, medyo maliwanag sila dito sa part na to, and then yung tupi ng mga damit din ay maganda na yung pagkakagawa. Pero may mga imagery pa rin sila kasi may mga halo pa rin sila. And then next is we have Leonardo da Vinci. Ito ay siya yung isa sa pinakasikat, pinaka-iconic during the Renaissance, especially yung Mona Lisa niya and then the Last Supper. Okay, which shows clearly value or yung tinatawag natin na chiaroscuro, 'di ba? Yung light and darkness. So makikita natin si Mona Lisa, very intricate din yung pagkakatupi ng damit niya, okay na. Okay, tapos ito din makikita natin na yung mga apostles yung kanilang facial expression, okay na. Realistic na yung proportion. Si Mona Lisa, realistic na rin yung proportion. So, makikita natin, ito na yung part ng Renaissance na very refined na yung gawa. And then, it's close to reality. Okay? Kasi yun nga yung naging aim din ng Renaissance. Parang katulad sa classical times or classical Greeks, classical Romance na they aim to be perfect or they aim to be as close to reality as possible. Okay, so you have Michelangelo. So Michelangelo naman ay kilala for his fresco painting sa Sistine Chapel sa ceiling, ayan, kung saan nag-paint siya ng iba't ibang mga scenes sa Bible, okay, like mga angels, mga cherubins, ganyan. Tapos yung mga iba't ibang mga scenes katulad ng creation of Adam. So makikita natin sa creation of Adam, nakahubad na si Adam. Again, nung medieval times, bawal yan, censored yan, pero dahil Renaissance period na welcome na yung pagdodrawing ng hubad na tao. Ayan, so makikita natin yung hubad na katawan ni Adam, pati yung mga muscles, so pati yung proportion ng katawan, yung angle, yung mga ugat din, ayan, makikita natin na very accurate na siya. Okay? So, very detailed na siya. As well as yung kay God. Okay? Makikita natin. Kasi may mga angels dito, ayos na rin yung kanilang proportion. So, makikita natin, develop na at this point yung artistic styles. Parang katulad na siya ng classical. And then we have Raphael. So, si Raphael, makikita natin, itong School of Athens, parang pinakita niya dyan yung School of Athens, which is a classical topic or classical subject, classical Greek. So, makikita natin, School of Athens, and then halo-halo yung mga saints, tsaka yung mga pagan figures dyan. Marami yan sila na nagsama-sama, like mga philosophers, mga saints, tsaka yung mga pagan figures, nagsama-sama sila dito sa School of Athens. Okay? So, unlike nung mga topic noong medieval period, kung saan bawal yung mga pagans, ganyan, bawal yung mga philosophers kasi nga parang na-excommunicate sila kasi kino-question nila yung ano, yung church. Pero dito sa depiction ni Raphael, magkakasama sila. Okay? So yun nga, kaya unique din yung Renaissance. And then we have Madonna del Cardellino. Actually, lahat ng lady, ang tawag nila doon ay Madonna. Okay? During the Renaissance. And then we have Titian, Sacred and Profane Love. Sabi ko nga kanina, nagkaroon sila ng mga topics na non-religious. Okay? So, hindi naman ibig sabihin ng non-religious, automatically pagan agad or gods and goddesses kagad ng ibang religion or ng pagan religion. Ang sinasabi natin na non-religious, sometimes it could be parang incarnates or parang personified versions ng mga abstract na mga concepts such as love. Okay? So, anong nangyari is, ginuxtapose ni Titian sa pamamagitan ng painting niya yung sacred love na pinakita niya dahil sacred tong love na ito, si Sacred Love ay well-dressed. Okay? So, makapal yung damit niya, modest siyang tignan, maayos siyang tignan, ang buhok niya ay neat, ang upo niya ay maayos, ganyan. Kasi sacred siya. So, siya si Sacred Love. What about si Profane Love? Okay? Si Profane Love naman ay, ayan, hindi maayos yung damit, nakahubad siya, ganyan yung upo niya, hindi maayos din, yung buhok niya magulo. Okay, so makikita nyo yung juxtaposition ni sacred love and then ni profane love. Okay, so according to Tit yan. So, ibig sabihin, non-religious. Hindi naman siya about sa religion, but rather, it is about personified na abstract concepts. What about Renaissance sculptures? Okay, so we have si Donatello di Niccolo Bardi. Okay, so ayan, nakukumpleto na yung ating mga Ninja Turtles. Okay, so si Donatello is kilala siya sa mga sculpture. So we have Magdalene Penitent. Si Magdalene Penitent ay, ayan, yung nagsisisi na si Mary Magdalene. Yung proportion ay medyo okay na, pero yung facial expression ay ayun, medyo rough pa rin yung forms niya. Equestrian. So, yung equestrian ay actually sikat noong Roman times. So, yung mga generals nila, yung mga rulers nila is ginagawa nila ng sculpture na nakasakay sa kabayo. Kapag ang isang figure ay nakasakay sa kabayo, automatically ang tawag nila doon ay equestrian sculpture. Pero si Donatello di Niccolo Bardi, nakilala siya sa equestrian, okay, sa equestrian sculpture, sa mga ginagawa niya ng equestrian sculpture. And then we have Young David. Yun nga, si Young David din ay nakahubad. So, bumabalik na nga sila katulad noon sa luma or sa classical na mga sculptures wherein pinapakita yung hubad na katawan ng tao. Si Magdalene Penitent na alam ko wood to eh. Wood sculpture. Okay, so we have Pieta ni Michelangelo and then David. So sa Pieta naman makikita natin na si Mary holding the dead body of Jesus. And then makikita natin yung tupi ng damit, very intricate yung pagkakagawa. And then the proportion of the body, napakaganda na ng proportion niya. So, almost perfect na yung proportion ng katawan. So, makikita natin na ayan, kandong-kandong niya, showing the strength of the mother, providing support for her son. So, makikita natin yung tapi ng damit, very complex yung pagkakagawa. And then, yung laki ni Mary is proportionate to dun sa laki ni Jesus. And then, we have also David. So, makikita natin dito yung muka, and then yung buhok, yung pagkakagawa mismo ng sculpture is very comparable to classical Greek sculptures. Okay? So makikita natin hubad na din si David, hindi siya nakadamit. Okay? So ibig sabihin, parang paying homage to classical Greek sculptures talaga siya. So makikita na, as well as yung detail din ng genital na maliit. Oh, yun, parang katulad ng Athenian sculptures before. Ayan, yung proportion maganda na rin. Pati yung mga muscles very refined na din. So, ito na yung part ng art ng mga artist na sobrang refined na ng gawa nila. Maganda na. What about Renaissance architecture? So, in contrast to the paintings and then the sculptures that they have during the Renaissance, their architecture is actually very simple. Okay? So, ito si Filippo Brunelleschi. Siya yung gumawa ng dome ng Florence Cathedral. So, hindi katulad ng like Byzantine or ng Gothic yung mga designs. Actually, very simple lang yung designs. Katulad ng Patsy Chapel and then ng Florence Cathedral. Ayan nga, puro dome lang siya. So, simple lang yung designs nila. Ayan, pero sturdy, very sturdy yung mga buildings nila. And then we have, ayan, Basilica of St. Lawrence. Katulad nga ng sinabi ko kanina, pag sinabing basilica, straight lang yan sila. Okay, so ayan, rectangle yung shape, and usually may dome sa dulo. And then they have commercial buildings. Commercial buildings or yung mga bahay din ng mga mayayaman, hindi sila yung sobrang complicated yung design nila. Usually, yung mga Renaissance architecture ay rectangle. So, yung facade nila pantay na rectangle. Ayan. So, puro ganyan yung itsura nila. So, Palazzo de Medici Riccardi. So, actually, yung Medici na family, ito yung pinakamakapangyarihan noong panahon ng Renaissance. So, makikita natin na kahit na sila yung pinakamakapangyarihan, ang bahay nila ay simple lang yung design, rectangle lang. Kasi nga, ito yung usong architecture style during the Renaissance. Yan, rectangle lang. As in, super rectangle lang yung facade. And usually, 3 floors siya. So, ito yung first floor, second floor, and then yung third floor. Tapos, slab yung taas. Same din ng Palazzo Rucellai. So, makikita nyo na 1, 2, 3, and then, rectangle lang din. Rectangle yung taas, rectangle yung harap. Now, lastly, we have Baroque period. So, but the Baroque style is characterized by exaggerated motion and clear detail used to produce drama, exuberance, and grandeur in sculpture, painting, architecture, literature, dance, and music. Baroque iconography was direct, obvious, and dramatic, intending to appeal above all to the senses and the emotions. So basically, the focus of the Baroque period is to become exaggerated, to become dramatic. Okay? So basta exaggerated and dramatic Baroque. Okay? So Baroque style yun. Okay? So the use of chiaroscuro technique is a well-known trait of Baroque art. This technique refers to the interplay between light and dark and is often used in paintings of dimly lit scenes to produce a very high contrast and dramatic atmosphere. Again, talking about drama. So in order to achieve that sense of drama, they are using chiaroscuro technique or light and dark. So talagang naka-emphasize yung darkness at saka yung light. Okay? So magbibigay tayo ng example dito. Another is we have characteristics of Baroque art. Images are direct, obvious, and dramatic. Focusing on drama again. Tries to draw the viewer in to participate in the scene. So the artworks want to parang make the audience feel like they are in there also, to feel the emotions in the artwork also. Depictions feel physically and psychologically real, so they intend to look real and emotionally intense. Extravagant settings and ornamentation. Dramatic use of color, dramatic contrasts between light and dark, light and shadow, has continuous overlapping of figures and elements. Common themes, grandiose visions, okay? So mga pangitain, ecstasies and conversions, martyrdom and death, intense light, intense psychological moment. So, anything na medyo mabigat yung emotion na ini-entail, katulad nga ng mga pangitain, yung ecstasies, yung martyrdom and death. So, yung mga yon, intense lagi yung emotion or mabigat lagi yung emotion. So, yan, example ng Baroque painting, ayun nga, sabi ko nga, yung chiaroscuro, yung kanilang ginagamit. So, heavily imply or heavily dependent on light and shadow. So, makikita nyo, yung background niya, background ng Baroque painting, karamihan dito ay madilim. Tapos, konti lang yung liwanag na pumapasok. Ang nakafocus lang yung liwanag doon sa mga important details nila. Kaya din siya tinatawag na direct. Kaya dito, conversion of Saint Paul. So, tinitignan yung yung conversion din ni Pablo. Okay? So, we have Calling of Saint Matthew by Caravaggio. Okay? So, makikita natin calling naman ng isang santo. So, again, depicting intense emotions. The Night Watch by Rembrandt. Ayan, makikita nyo, madilim. Crucifixion, again, martyrdom, yung theme, by Peter Paul Rubens. So, makikita natin, yung lahat ng mga depiction na ito ay madidilim. Okay? At yung topic lang nila, or yung kung ano yung mahalagang detail, yun lang yung nilalagyan nila ngayon ng liwanag. Okay? Parang to entail drama. Okay? So what about Baroque sculpture? Sabi nga natin exaggerated and exuberant yung dating ng artworks ng Baroque period. So makikita natin na ayan yung damit, grabe yung tupi, sobrang complex ng mga tupi ng damit. Actually yung Baroque sculpture mahilig sila sa overlapping ng mga tupi-tupi ng damit. Okay, katulad nito. So Ecstasy of Saint Teresa by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, and then we have the Trevi Fountain by Salvi and Bracci. Ito yung nakikita dun sa parang ano 'to, isa siyang tourist attraction, para siyang tourist spot, okay, ayan makikita natin yung mga sculpture nila. So, marami siyang mga tupi-tupi, mahilig sila sa mga tupi-tupi sa Baroque sculpture. What about Baroque architecture? Okay, so you have this as your example for Baroque architecture. So, basically parang ano siya, may mga columns siya, binalik ulit yung paggamit ng mga columns, ng mga orders natin, columns, ayan kung makikita ninyo, ayan. So, mga composite, ganyan yung mga columns nila. Tapos may mga paggamit din ng domes and then ng mga relief sculptures. Okay, so ayan. Paggamit ng may mga styles. Sila din yung naglagay ng mga styles na may mga santo sa taas. May mga maliliit na details ng mga santo sa mga poste-poste, ayan. So, this is the St. Peter's Basilica of Rome, yung bago na, and then the Church of San Carlo alle Quattro Fontan. Okay, so yun po yung katapusan ng ating second video. For our third video, we are going to have about modern art and contemporary art. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video.